Should we be paying Lobola, or is Lobola become irrelevant?
My position is
the feminist position.
the feminist position.
Tota la o ipona o le ngwana mosetsana a bo tsa be dithoto tsa gago o tsamaya o le esi ga o rere lope wa go nna ko wa inyadisa.
The whole marrying someone that you're related to, which is why we have a saying, yeah, again. So I want to hear your position. I'm sorry to be turning the tables around.
So for one to properly claim, or for a universal partnership to be recognized, acknowledged by the court, there has to be that intention to live as if you are husband and wife. If it is courtship, then no.
This is Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. We enthuse, we energize, we inspire, and we empower intrapreneurs and entrepreneurs of all stripes in BW and beyond. Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Legal Series. This is the Legal Series, which is a brainchild of Lerumo Mogobe legal practitioners, and is also part of Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. In this brand new offering, what we seek to do is to introduce you to legal issues, the complexities thereof, the ups and downs thereof. What I do is that I bring experts who are steeped in the law, and you'll find out momentarily who my experts are in this first episode. But my task now is to simply explain to you why the legal series. What we've discovered over time is that there is a degree of lack of awareness amongst the public about what lawyers do, what the law does, how it operates, how it impacts them, how it affects them. And my team and I got together and found that there's a gap that needs to be filled, hence the legal series. And I'm fortunate to have a law firm powering this in terms of covering the costs that are associated with the program and helping Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom to get it off the ground. Let me welcome my guests to this first episode of the legal series. And we will be also from time to time be engaging with each other, sort of engaging in a few robust exchanges here and there, so that we can get to useful information on your behalf. On my left, on my far left, that side is attorney Kuda. I would like for him to introduce himself by summarizing his CV and telling us what he's about. But just before he comes on, let me just let you know that in this episode we're going to start with a very foundational topic, the topic of marriage. As you know, marriage is really the foundation of the entire society. It's a very important subject, and it's marriage, as it were, is the infrastructure upon which society is based. So we thought in this first episode, since we are all products of marriage in one form or the other, we are all product of in one form or the other, we are product of a situation where marriage is involved. So we thought that this would be an ideal topic to start with. Mr. Kuda, would you care to introduce yourself? Give us a short snippet about yourself and abbreviated CV.
Thank you very much for having me, Mr. Mogobe. Allow me to greet the viewers. My name is kuda Chihita. I'm an attorney with Lerumo Mogobe Legal Practitioners. I've been practicing for over 2 years. I'm also a master's candidate, or rather a soon-to-be master's holder. I'm yet, or rather, set to graduate from the University of Botswana in October 2024. Thank you for having me.
Excellent.
Once again.
What we thought we spice things with here is to have a member of the public joining us. In this case, I'm delighted to say we have a chief marketing officer of our company, or a group of companies, Mogobe Incorporated. Joining us is Mr. Osenotse Mabote. He will be representing the public, and he will also be doubling up as my co-host from time to time, throwing in one or two issues. But for today's episode, he represents the public and is going to ask things or comment from that perspective. But introduce yourself further, say, in terms of your educational background, etc.
Hello, viewer, hello, listeners. I'm Osenotse Mabote. I'm a product of marriage. My parents were married for over 39 years. So I think maybe I understand the institution much better. I did graphic design at South Africa. I'm a civic activist. I'm also a creative visionary and also a conservative traditionalist, if you may say. Thank you.
Okay. Last but not least, we have a feminist who likes to call herself by that name. I like to call her Wilhelmina because that's the name of her firm, but she will describe herself in greater detail. Go ahead and introduce yourself, man.
Hello, I am Phatsimo Letshwenyo. I am a feminist, a very huge feminist. I am an attorney, currently in the process of starting her own law firm, Chihita and Wilhelmina Attorneys. I'm also a visual artist who expresses her feminism and the law through her art as well. And I'm delighted to be here.
Okay. All right, let's get the ball rolling in terms of this episode by going straight into the subject and getting working definitions in place. Wilhelmina, do you mind giving us a definition of marriage?
Of marriage. Well, should I? Okay. Well, the legal aspect of it is the union between a man and a woman. But globally, it could be the union between two parties of age. But there are also underlying tones to what a marriage could be because of what makes it valid.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, Mr. Kuda, family. We're talking about family. Marriage is intended to create a family bond, at least legally. Do you have a working definition?
A family. Well, in terms of the law, there is no strict definition, or rather definition that is cast in stone, but a family is generally defined as a unit of people who are living together and who are tied by marriage, by blood, or by adoption. That is what a family basically is.
So that in fact means that is how it is formed.
Yes.
Okay. There's a religious aspect to it as well. Maybe this is a good point to bring in our member of the public, Rema, because we are all lawyers here, and the tendency is for lawyers to talk above people. So let's see what's your take on this.
Mo ke tabogele mo puong e ke tlhaloganyang botoka nna ke tlhaloganya gore family ke ka Setswana ke ha e leng gore go na le ke lolapa mme lolapa mo Setswaneng rona re itse gore lolapa e kgona go nna lolapa la monna le esi ke na le re mogolo mo na bja go te motlhanka wa bangwe o na agile lolapa ela le go ele monna le esi mme ne re go tsamaya go te nya go hale ke ga re se mama ka gore go na le ntlo nna mo teng e be ke tlhaloganya gape gore go kgona go nna lolapa lo e leng gore ke lwa mme ana le bana ba le bosi ile gore a single parent household ke family ha entse yalo go wa go nna le leng gore ya ka kuda ka shantsa bua go na le gore batho ba adoptile ba mo teng mo le gore motho mo gona go tswala kwa tsante mo go ne gona gore motho a tswa kwa tswa ntenya la rora go tlela ka motho kana nyana go te ngwana be go te motho ke monna nyana ga ntenya be le mo tsheto tse se fane mme se go nne le go tsa mo go teng legal adoption. We'll
come to that one. Yes, yeah.
If you want to go family reads in or nuclear, in or from the Mogobe, in or Kemon Mosadi, over Halula.
Okay. So how is marriage itself? I get this largely about family and marriage. How is family created or formed in Botswana? What does it take legally to have a family in the country?
Well, in terms of the laws of Botswana, a marriage or a family is founded when two consenting adults of different sexes come together and decide that they want to spend the rest of their life together, and thereafter approach either the district office or the Khosi in terms of customary law and express their intent to get into a marriage. that is how a family is founded.
I've heard people talk of a polygamous, marriage and a normal nuclear monogamous marriage. What are the distinctions, and are they both recognized in this country?
Yes, but let me say it depends with the perspective with which you take a look at the two. So in terms of the civil law of Botswana, more fully the Marriage Act, this act recognizes one type of marriage only, and this is the monogamous marriage. So in terms of the Marriage Act, you can only get married to one person at a specific time. Before you marry another person, you have to have divorced the first.
Isn't it dependent on here? I was just throwing my experience. Does it not depend entirely whether you are going the civil route or the customary route? My understanding is that if you get married under customary law and you also want it to be polygamous, then you have to go through certain processes. For instance, there's a guy who's very popular on social media who's married to two. They even have a show, but they've gone through the processes under customary law. So, and my understanding is that customary marriage, even if it's polygamous, is recognized.
Yes.
Am I correct?
Yes, you are. As I was still explaining.
Okay.
The Marriage Act strictly covers civil marriages. And in terms of a civil marriage, it can only be monogamous. However, Botswana has a dual system of law. As such, customary law and civil law, they go hand in hand. So in terms of customary law, a marriage can also be founded. And in terms of customary law, parties can decide to form a polygamous marriage. So in terms of customary law, a man can marry the first wife, the second wife, and the third wife, and they can live together at the same time. But in terms of the civil law, in terms of the Marriage Act, it's not possible. Therefore, this brings me to the perception that if you want to marry or if you want to live a monogamous life, you have to marry in terms of civil law, which is the Marriage Act. And if you want to be a polygamous person, if you want to found a polygamous marriage, you have to marry in terms of customary law or in terms of religious law. For example, Muslim law, it allows for polygamy. The law of the apostolic sect, or the people famously known as Mazezuru, it allows for polygamous marriages. So yes, both marriages are recognized in Botswana.
I wonder what a feminist take is on this, especially a feminist who happens to be very knowledgeable in the law. So, Phatsimo Letshwenyo.
Yes.
What is your take on this? What is your view? Also, don't hesitate to criticize the law if you feel that it's defective.
Yes. Well, his position as to how the law stands is correct. What I can say really regarding the whole division of whether you're going to take the customary law route or the civil route is that I think that it would be so much better if the act recognized customary law to its fullest degree. And this is because it would provide an opportunity for polygamous marriages to be fully recognized, and to be fully recognized in the perfect essence, in that polyandry is recognized and all the different types of...
Polyandry is when the...
polyandry is where even a woman can take more than one husband. Because as far as...
Is that does it have room in customary law? I've never heard of that.
Which is the point I'm trying to make, that if it is put into the act to recognize polygamy under civil law, it provides an opportunity for such instances to exist, or for someone to take different kind of partners. Perhaps I want to marry Tapelo and Neo and have a husband and a wife. So it would provide an opportunity for people to, be accepted in all forms as they come.
To me, that would be a state of chaos.
It would not.
Yeah, it is.
Or it would be organized chaos.
Let's see what a member of the public in the form of Mr. Mabote thinks.
No, na tota nna ke lebelela gore I think re tabogetse ko ngwageng ya makgowa ka gore ga lebelela re na le 129 years from 1895 re le Batswana morago ga colonialism kana imperialism ya makgowa go re melao ye ka bontsi e dirwa
including the independence period.
Including independence period. Go re melao ye ka bontsi e dirwa go lebeletswe one molao o gogang le hase o le gore ke wa makgowa. Ha ke tsoro batho lo bitsa lo re ke wa e molao lo dirisa.
Civil law.
That's the civil law or Roman Dutch law.
Roman
Common law.
Roman Dutch law. Jaanong tota la ka South Africa go lebega gore rona ka ne re ntse ka teng mo South African re ne re le polygamous. Me polygamous polygamy ne re berekela ka ga go ne go ntse ka teng ka gore ha o ka lebelela le balwapana ga gola sentlela nna ke ra gore re mogolo bane ba le polygamous ke ga mo go tla itsile ka hale ka ga le ka lapeng ne gore mosadi o mongwe o tswa ka ga monna le mongwe hela bana ba tenne ba utlwana hela go sena le bothata bo re bona go mpie go gore polygamy e dirwa mo latseng la Botswana e dirwa go iphitlhiwa ile gore ha e dirwa motho wa iphitlha and then ha iphitlha ha o ngwa mo tshwara yana wa mo kapa wa mo kaletsa kana wa mo khama yo go nna gender based violence ka gore re tlogetse se leng gore ke sone Setswana sa rona ga e ka jare mo Setswaneng be go te Osenotse o ka tloga nyala monna o mongwe ka Setswana ga se ngwao ya rona kampo Osenotse e ka rantsana ba nyala mosadi o mongwe ba nyala monna ba nyala ke banna ba le babedi ba hapana ba le bararo ka Setswana dio tse dintsi nya re dumela gore tlabele kheo se ka re bua le go mora le sotoma hela ga na ga re lebe jalo re le Maafrika.
Are there societies where polyandry and polygamy works currently?
Yes, there are a lot of places in Asian countries where such instances are perfectly fine. But my position is that if it is okay for a man to marry more than one person and we're all human beings and the Constitution considers us to be equal, what is our opinion really if a woman is interested in taking more than one husband?
But having said all that, Kuda, what is the position of the law in terms of recognizing these various types of marriages? We also have Muslim marriages, we have Sezuru marriages, we have all kinds of marriages, and we can only deal with the law as we find it now, unless we want to maybe persuade our MPs to consider introducing new bills. But for now, what is the current position?
All right. The current position is this. Like I have said earlier on, Botswana has a dual system of law. Therefore, the common law or Roman Dutch law operates hand in hand, or rather together with the customary law. So if you're to take a look at the Marriage Act, the Marriage Act recognizes the civil marriage, which is one man, one woman. That's a monogamous marriage. And the very same Marriage Act, when you take a look at Section 22, Section 23, it talks about the registration of marriages which have been solemnized in terms of customary law, in terms of Hindu law, in terms of Muslim law, and in terms of any other religious law. Therefore, in terms of the Marriage Act, parties can approach the district commissioner and get married in terms of the civil law. But supposing I and a female counterpart have gotten married in terms of Muslim law, we can later on approach the district commissioner and say, District Commissioner, the two of us got married in terms of Muslim law. Can you please register our marriage? And our marriage will be registered in terms of the Marriage Act. But it is not a civil marriage. It is a marriage which has been solemnized in terms of Hindu law or Muslim law or Zezuru law, but it is registered for the purpose of recognition. So that tomorrow, if it so happens that I pass away or my wife pass away, there is evidence that these two were married. And such evidence will be in the public domain.
While you are still on that, does the same recognition have to subsist for customary marriages? In other words, after finishing with the chief, do you still have to go to the district commissioner?
Yes. You do. You have to register the marriage, the customary marriage. You are actually given a period as to when you can register the marriage and for it to be recognized.
It's a period of 2 months.
Yes. Yes.
If you don't register in that time,
Well, the so unfortunate part is the act does not state what then follows if you do not register your marriage.
does
within.
the marriage cease to be recognized or cease to exist?
Well, the law does not say. That's a lacuna that exists within the law. And I believe our legislators have got to take a look at that and possibly insert an amendment. Yes.
But just from my point of view, I think from the language and from our understanding of the laws of interpretation, we can simply presume from the language, like I've said, that where you don't register the marriage, then the marriage is not recognized.
Okay.
Yes.
I want to bring in Mr. Mabote here to comment on this aspect, and more particularly on the on the customary aspect. As a traditionalist, Mr. Mabote, what views do you hold on this?
ga ke itse nna ke gore ke bona gore batho ba ga rona ba jewang tsoma ka gore gantsi ntse o ka re banyala gabedi lo tlang kgakolola ke kgosi go na le lenyalo le le tsamawang la go irwa ko kgosing go ntshiwa bogadi le e leng gore ga o sa ntsha bogadi ko gangwe ketse re dumela gore wa bo o sa tsaya go be go batliwa mosadi a ba go batliwa ha a tswa ko go na le lenyalo lo lengwe lo lo dirwang gape go ga malaodi ba tle ba nna certificate tse pedi tse nako nna go ka re batho ba rona ba gakolola gore they must have these 2 certificates mme ka ga ke utlwang diagente di bua ka teng go raya gore o ka nna tswela ko kgotlakgolo ko ga ngwaketse a bo o tsamaya o ya lwapeng sa tlhoka le gore o ye ga malaodi mme yaanong batho ba rona ka ga go ntseng ka teng ebile ke dumela gore legal series e tla thusa go raya gore o kgona go ya ka malaodi ela ga o sena o tswa ka malaodi o bo o tswa go tsamaya mme se ke se buang ga ke bua gore rona ka tlhaloganyang lonyalo ka teng ko gangwe ke tse ke gore ya ka lela gabedi yana ga o ntshitse bogadi be mosadi wa gago a go batliwa go raya gore ke gone o ya ka o tsere le ko kgotleng borrebe ba go go gola mme wa laiwa e be gore go raya gore le monna wa laiwa ke borrebe ba ba tsereng tiro e irwa only ke batho ba ba tsereng jaaka wena ga ka ka gola ke sa tsaya go raya gore ke gone ke gore wa bo hitile that passage ya go tsaya mme yaanong gape go na le mo go teng go saena go saena rona ka Setswana re itse gore o saena ha ile gore go tswale your lover bolo tsamaya lo tsa your friends and then bolo tsa go tsana kwa malaodi and then you sign yone document ya bo gore lo inyadisitse re be re dumela gore ha o tsa ha ba go lo bele ba sa itse sepe ka go bo wa bo itseisitse o yana o tsa ka tseo ya sekgo re dumela gore mme ha o itseisitse Mr. Mogobe o itseisitse o sign ne jalo ka se ngwaketse kana ka Setswana ha re go tseye gore o tsere you are not married because ga ba ntsha dikgomo ha o tsene go ga gore riwa rago kuba a ba o tsentse reng kana ga ba etsa ga wa ira process ya ngwao ya rona ya gore go tsewa ka go ntsha bogadi go ntshwa mekwele process e yo tlhela tsontse re o e dira ga o tsamaya go ira yo ke ga go elese
no ke sa go ganetse ke tlhaloganya jalo gore o tshwanetse we go kgotleng go go rurihatsa gore tota motho wa monyalo bana ba go le ba a re o tsena go ba go botsa gore a mme dikgomo di teng e ba kopa ba bang gore ba e go rurihatsa malatsing a ba batla go di bala ba di bona ka gore pele sene se se iragala gore ba tota ba re dikgomo di teng ka so e boetse gape mo kgotleng go itlhelwa le go dikgomo ga dio botse engwe ba ratang go e botsa ka gore a o moagetse. They are very, very strong on wanting to make sure that you've provided accommodation for your future wife. But it's true that we are operating under dual systems. It seems to me that even if you've done the traditional system and you followed every single step, there's still, for purpose of recognition, for purpose of recordal, a need for you to go and register at Ramolaudi, to the point where even the chiefs will direct you, or no, we're giving you this, but go and finish. That's how then the marriage becomes complete.
Yes.
So it's a dual system that is there, but you know, that's the way I interpret it. But let's move on. What about cohabitation? Is that legal in Botswana? But by nyadisa ba nna mmogo motho a nna le nyatsi ya gago.
Well, it's not illegal.
Mm.
And I would say that in terms of relating it to marriage, it would be legal to the extent that in some instances it could be recognized as what is referred to as a universal partnership.
Mhm.
And that is where now the parties are going their separate ways, and the other party feels, but I've contributed my time, I've contributed my money, I've contributed my ideas for you to be able to acquire the property or for you to acquire the certain lifestyle that you are currently living. And by virtue of that, I believe I am entitled to a percentage of whatever property
What
that
exactly
you
is a universal partnership?
have. It is, as I've described, where parties have
Does if you spend a week with somebody, you're a universal partner?
I think that is what I need to clarify. In order for you to be in a universal partnership with someone, you don't necessarily have to be cohabiting with that person. Being in a romantic relationship where the parties are also assisting each other, be it by time, be it by money, whatever resources to acquire certain properties.
Does the law recognize it?
It does
And
recognize
if
it.
so, back yourself up.
Okay. Back myself up with what? Case law or
Maybe, whatever.
because universal partnership is recognized under common law. So in order for us to locate its legality or its recognition by the law, we'd have to consider a plethora of cases. And it's usually considered on a case by case basis to say you're claiming a percentage of this person's assets. What have you contributed? And from my recollection of the case law, even just your contribution of your time to say, while you were busy working, I was tending to the household, I was taking care of your kids, is enough.
I've seen cases where parties would stay together for say 20 years and then the man passes away. Within a space of 1 week, all the relatives have come, grabbed everything, and I don't hear the courts or anybody saying there's a universal partnership, you can't grab everything. And even the woman just walks away. As a lawyer, what advice would you give?
I would give advice to generally attorneys and our government, really. I feel like that is something that the public needs to be educated on. I don't think a lot of people are aware that they're in universal partnerships, but you'd find that they are. And that is why you'd find someone living with someone for 20 years and they've contributed a lot, not just that time, but their resources as well. They've given their partner money to start a business, and in the end, they walk away with absolutely nothing.
You have a point of view on this, Mr. Mabote?
Go mo di phatsa. You remember what is a very dangerous thing is universal what?
Partnership.
Or
Universal
cohabitation.
partnership. Ba re nta ba tle go tsenya ka torong. Kana gore every time you are dating someone, if they are smart enough, ba tla go sendela di message ya go track. I know nka di masana ne ho ira sana ne ho yena itse gore kantari ana she is doing time banking. Nako yo tla bo mara gore tswa yana ke te ke tsa mere ka ha ka gore nna ke itse go mo go teng go ratana ka Setswana go teng yo go lebega gore mela wa gompieno o supa gore go mo go teng go ratana hela ka bogone o ka re ga go ka gore o rata motho o tshwantse o mo itse pele. You date someone to know them, and then how gore okay, this person na le na ra utlwana, then you can get married. But then I gore mala what just that process of you knowing that person, because ha ka twa tabogela bo ro nyala motho ona le go ngadi kgwedinyana le ene o santse o mo itse o tsena konyana le ya no santse o ro tsana konyana le years down the line or 2 years down the line, if they're smart enough, maybe they are attorneys or they know the law, o to ba gora ba re na you there ra gore wa ntiela na go ra gore a tsena le ke itse rona di asetse go bona nne re kgaogane ha o santse o ro nyama ne ke sa go nyala ro a tlola o tsena ha o tsa go legal Lerumo Mogobe legal practitioners kana wa go go lawyer dingwe o tsena ka o kgaola di tsa go ka bogare go mo go rotloetsa borukutli both partners.
Well, I don't know really whether the state of the law is clear on this. I would really want to hear Mr. Kuda say something about it.
I was looking at a case just this morning wherein parties had cohabited for 25 years. But the cohabitation wasn't the husband and the wife in the same house for 25 years. No, it was them living their lives together as if they're husband and wife, and yet they are not. So there has to be an understanding between the two parties that, yes, we are not married, we are above the stage of a relationship, we are now living as if we are husband and wife. So for one to claim before the courts of law to say I was in a partnership, the other party or the party who's claiming has got to prove that we were living as if we are husband and wife. And within this case, I remember the lady is the one who was claiming. She called neighbors, and the neighbors testified to the effect that, Rona, we knew they're husband and wife. The husband would say, "Ke mosadi wa me," and the woman would say, "Ke monna wa me," and they have kids. We are shocked that they are not married. We knew them to be married, but yet they are not. So for one to properly claim, or for a universal partnership to be recognized, acknowledged by the court, there has to be that intention to live as if you are husband and wife. If it is courtship, then no. People can be in a courtship for 5 to 10 years, but just because you're in a courtship, it doesn't necessarily give you the right to claim. You have to
and
prove.
how does the court determine the nature of the regime? How does the court determine whether it was in community of property or out of community of property in such a circumstance?
Okay.
Or is every universal partnership in community?
Okay. So I think there is something that hasn't been clarified right from the beginning. So with universal partnerships, right, tacit universal partnerships, they arose, or our courts started referring to them because of situations wherein people would come together, stay as husband and wife, and the wife would play a supportive role. The wife would act as an accountant, or the wife would maybe do some of the errands of the husband's company. And then after 15, 20 years of that happening, then the husband will say, so our courts then decided to say, but this lady, she has to be compensated. She has got to be remunerated for all the effort, the support that she's been giving to you. You were building a company, you were the sole shareholder, but this wife played a supportive role.
Wife in quotes.
Yes, wife in quotes. This woman you lived with, she played a role. She played a wife role. She did not pursue her own dreams to support you.
That was great.
And because of that...
Well, this program aims to also educate the public and to alert them if they are putting themselves in danger.
Yes.
Do you think a man who stays, or a woman who stays with a spouse who doesn't work for 5 years or 7 years or 10 years is placing themselves at risk where they stand to lose 50% of their assets in the event that there is a divorce, God forbid?
Well,
Although having said that, I should mention that there will be a special program to discuss divorce only, because it does. But you can just touch on it, whether the man or the woman is at risk.
Okay. You had asked a question earlier on, and that is marriage in community or out of community. I believe you ask that again, then we can properly address it. But for now, let me address your most recent question. So our courts take a look at the contribution that you brought. What was your contribution? Of course, at times it might not be in monetary terms, but the court will have to use its discretion and come to a value judgment. So, for example, supposing two parties were living as husband and wife, and one was earning 20,000 pula and the other was earning 40,000 pula, which is times 2 the other. So upon divorce, the courts would then say, okay, because the other party was earning twice more than the other, therefore, as this property is being shared between the two of you, as you are dissolving this partnership, the other party should get 2/3 and you get 1/3.
But the argument is that as a wife, a stay-at-home wife, you work 10 times as hard, because when the husband arrives, you're the one who's cooking, and then I think you have a lot to say on this, and then I'll bring in Mr. Mabote.
Yes, I was about to say that I think that is another thing, and it's something that is very difficult to drill into a lot of people's mind, that a lot of stay-at-home moms aren't necessarily just staying at home waiting for their husbands to return and bring the money home and whatnot. There's actual work that they're putting in, and you know, some of them are taking care of children, cleaning, making sure the household is clean, making sure the husband looks presentable at their work. Those are the contributions that I've seen in certain cases the court taking into consideration to say, you, like I've said earlier, your contribution of your time. You've contributed your time. You could have been pursuing your studies. You could have been studying your own business, but instead you focused on ensuring that this particular person has a comfortable environment in order for them to achieve the certain level of assets that they currently have. So that is something that the court pays into consideration.
Yeah.
And I would be really careful in referring to it as placing yourself at risk because because one would say the same thing about getting married in community of property. Is it really placing yourself at risk, or just placing yourself at the mercy of love, as he has said?
So it's a matter of individual opinion. Remember, throw in your...
ya nna tota kana ke tlabe ke ntse ke galeletse ke gata ka ga Setswaneng tota la o ipona o le ngwana mosetsana a bo tsa dithoto tsa gago. You take your dithoto tsa gago, you go to this guy, o tsamaya o le esi ga o rere lope wa go nna ko wa inyadisa kana ka Setswana wa tseo. You get married, I marry you as a guy, and you get married to a family. So when I go na le motho wa inyadisa ke so go gore go ne go mo yana ke maduo a bo kebe kwa hala gore o tsamaya go na le motho o tsa bagolo ba se mo teng jang. How ira bo kebe ko jo budirang o tlhokomologa ga di o inyadisa o tlhokomologa na ga ka rutsa bana ba sana ba ga itse di ke go gore lo inyadisen go na le mola o tla lo sireletsa ba ga tso mola o tlhamaletsela polygamous marriage teng ene o buang ka one ntse gona le civil marriage e tlhalosang a tsameng ka tsela se se ke di diphatsa gore na ke rutetse gore batho ba ka di dira.
So in as much as there is anecdotal evidence and cases that these kind of universal marriages are recognized, your position, Rema, but as I understand it, is that is playing with fire, in your opinion. People should not even engage in that.
We should. I don't want to missing dangerous.
Can I just say?
So you're differing with the lawyers?
Yeah, no, not
or the young lawyers, because me, I'm a little bit on your side.
This is my position, right? My position is that if we clench onto customs in a progressing world, we're going to have a lot of issues because I think that back in the day when those customs were brought into place and whatnot, we had not been exposed to the global world and hadn't gotten to learn certain parts of ourselves. And you'd find that some people just are not interested in the institution of marriage. And they simply would like to just have a partner, whether it just be a partner or the universal partnership. And I think that this primarily caters for those instances.
Okay.
And also,
I'd like to move on. Yeah,
sorry, but yes. Yes, but what I'd like to say is that I think that this particular law protects women. And this is because
and men who endless.
Okay, let me say this. I want to primarily say that it protects women because of the customs. You'd find an instance where a man would isolate a woman. The woman will be doing the housework. The man is working, and this person is financially dependent on the man. And then whatever situation arises, and now the man wants to up and leave, and the lady is left there with years of work that has been done but no compensation. So it's just protection for those kind of situations, and I think that is reasonable and fair.
All right. Sometimes people say the law is an S, meaning that it's not always fair, and sometimes it's a matter of individual interpretation by the judge, and every case is decided on its own merits. But I would just like to throw in the words of our first president, Cecil Zakama, when he said, and I'm paraphrasing, that a nation that does not know its culture, that does not know its roots or its history, is a nation that doesn't have a future, or a nation that is lost, or words to that effect. So I'm a culturalist, and I believe in that. So with that having been said, we should see whether we can find our answers from our own culture. Now, I want us to move to the next issue that I think we should cover quickly on the issue of marriage. Prohibited degrees. Can you take a moment, Wilhelmina, to describe what prohibited degrees are?
These are the limitations on who you can marry, in simple terms. It's you follow the degrees of sanguinity, where the law dictates to you that you cannot marry either your mother, you cannot marry your father, your siblings, your uncles, your grandparents. And this is primarily provided for in the Marriage Act. Yes.
What is the logic behind this law? Sometimes we need to make sense out of this. Mr. Kuda.
The logic behind the law. I think these provisions, or rather the prohibited degrees of marriage, are simply there to safeguard vulnerable people and people with less power. So, for example, if it is that it's a young girl who was raised by a single parent, a dad, at one point or the other, the dad might want to marry the child, and that would be taking advantage of the child. Of course, maybe the child might later on be 22, 23 years of age, but that is taking advantage because you're on a psychologically more advantaged position than the girl, than your daughter. So I think the law was crafted in such a manner to protect people who are vulnerable. So that they do not fall trap into people who might want to be groomers, so to say.
Can I also add that there might be consideration that incestuous relationships lead to deformation, lead to the birth of people who are disabled
yes,
or
very
affected for biological reasons? That could be another powerful logic for it. And I think it's something that is also found in our culture. But let me ask you an interesting question here. If we're talking about a stepfather and a stepdaughter, if we're talking about a stepbrother and a stepdaughter, what is the situation? Is it also within prohibited degrees, or does it depend on whether or not that daughter or that son has been adopted?
Like I said, there are degrees of sanguinity. That is the degrees at which you...
What's the word?
Sanguinity.
Yeah,
Very heavy word.
Yeah.
But basically, the act describes those degrees to say going up, going down, going sideways. To say going up, your mother, your father, your grandparents. Going down, your siblings and their children. Going sideways.
I'm asking about adopted people or steps.
What I'm trying to basically build a picture of is to say it does not include step parents and
or stepchildren.
Or stepchildren, and it also does not include adopted children. So you can adopt a child and they grow up.
But
and
that
you marry them.
doesn't that bring a sense of shock?
It does.
And what does the law do to protect such a situation?
As far as I know, it really doesn't do anything. It just allows for it. But I'd also like to say, going back to something that you said about how our culture, it doesn't allow for this. That is not correct, actually.
For which?
For the whole marrying someone that you're related to, which is why we have a saying, so I want to hear your position. I'm sorry to be turning the tables around and asking the questions, but I want to know his position and your position, being a conservative and you being a culturalist, as you've said.
Yeah, Mr. Mabote.
Yeah, I do well as I can. How to Onyala Haitsadio. Okay. Moto Okamonyala and Yelian Tala Haitsadio is just second cousin.
Okay.
Baleka go bola gore se gore Botswana le sireletsa gore se ka gana le incest hela ga you read jaanong ha o nyala o ka nyala ntsalao ile ngwana ga ra go mogolo kako ha ka tswa nyala o ile gore is your first cousin ke ena a di boela sa ke bo ba lebeletse gore malapa o tla itshwara jang kana go mo go irola gore go tla di boela sa kene ra be re itse gore okay this family na these principles and goals but sela yana then re ka go tsaya ngwana ka go le ra mo isa ka go gore re bona gore the way the leads among ka teng ka re akanyang ka teng ka le follow ntse go ba go bona gore go nna ya di boela sa kene go ntse jang.
Okay.
All right.
Learned something.
Yes, but whilst we are on the degrees of marriage, right? In terms of the law, a husband or a man is not prohibited from marrying the late wife's sister. So, for example, if Mr. Mabote here is to be married and the wife passes on, God forbid, he can take the wife's sister, the late wife's sister, and marry her, and vice versa. If Miss Letshwenyo here,
that's not.
Yes.
It's not within the prohibited.
yes.
That makes perfect sense.
No,
Yes.
we see. I want to mola.
Because it's a different family. It's not. There's no blood connection.
There's no blood
Go
relation.
bua go te sa ntlo.
But then one can argue.
What is it called in
Go
Setswana?
bua go te sa ntlo. Kana gore
Explain it.
Or if my brother passes on, what happens is, as the younger brother, I'm invited to that house, maybe by Baholo, or do you think we can handle this Ferrari? Ke re ke tsamaya ke tsamaya ke
That is so
tsewa
wrong.
ke be ke ya go mmengole ga o fosi go buiwa le ene go go dumalana go na le consent a be gore gore ke a gore nana le bana ba le babedi ano e nna ba mabote wa boraro ke solo wa boraro wa bona wa botlhano I'm safeguarding the dynamics and the economics ya rona ka mo that household, which is a
But you
good
still have to go through the rigorous process of
Yeah.
marriage. Yeah.
eh,
All right. I want us to move on. Having covered the issue of prohibited degrees, who is the head of the family in Botswana? Who is
No.
considered the head and why?
No one. No one is the head of the family. Okay, and I say this because, well, initially.
We know scripturally who is the head. The head is the husband, and they're given authority. But then the Bible is very careful to say, you may be the head, but you must love your wife, and the wife must also, respect you.
Yes, I believe you would take it from that position, but I still stand by what I've said.
Which is?
No one is the head of the family. And that is thanks to the abolition of Marital Powers Act, because it came and it said we're equals. Why
Tell
do
us the
we?
situation before the act and the current situation.
Before the act, the husband was the head of the family, was considered to be the head of the family, and with this is what was considered the marital powers. So he'd be the head of the family. He would be considered as the overseer of the wife being the minor in this particular instance. So he'd make all the decisions regarding whatever his wife was to do, the contractual obligations his wives were
You
to
would even
enter.
just sell the house without consulting
Yes.
the wife.
And also in terms of the property of the wife, he would ensure that whatever decision that is made regarding the wife's property is his word, his final say.
When did the situation change in Botswana? The abolition of marital power.
It began in 2004, and I believe it was fully cemented in 2005. Yes.
So for the last 19 years,
Yes.
there's
There's
been no
been-
marital power.
Indeed.
But I don't think the absence of marital power means automatically there's no head. Nothing can progress without a head. So the fact that I just want to explain it the way I see it. The fact that the power has been taken away from the husband to abuse the family and to dissipate the assets of the family does not mean that they have no authority over that family or the headship has been diluted. I don't think the absence of that power means obviously everybody is the same. There's no head. The children, the wife, the husband are all at par. No, I don't agree with that.
That
But
is-
before you answer,
Okay.
I want to hear the traditional view or the point of view of
okay nya kana go gore ka ntse ke bua re na le 129 years re no mathateng ka gore kgetse ja ke ha are go re le kana ya la nya ga re le kane ka Setswana kana ha o nyala wena o le nthogo wa tsaya o tsaya motho o ntsha dikgomo wa monyala a ba tsa sefane sa ga wa submita mo go wena ga e gore ke a monyala bidio a Maramantele o nna Mmabote ke nna tlhogo ya lolapa loo mme le a le ka Setswana go tswa go loe ga go se ke gote ga o le tlhogo ya lolapa go raya gore odimo o kgerisang o rekisang dilo hela Botswana le sonyalo a Setswana nako le nako go nna go na le morero mo lwapeng gompieko yala yana le a ka re le head of the state o na di-power tse di seng kana ka sepe ga re lekanela mo company Mr. Mogobe ke director ke sone se o bonang one molao o buang ka one o bolaya gore batho ba lekanela divorce di oketsegile malapa a nang le basadi a go ke bomme a oketsegile ka gore yaanong go na le chaos go tia bulela ditswe yaanong a bulela ditswe yaanong ke one maduo a teng one ya gore re se ka ra nna le lebelao e leng gore go itse go te tota mme ga gona institution epe e ka tshelang e sena motho yo o nang le di-power o e eteletseng pele gope.
Mr. Kuda, can you share your point of view on this one?
Allow me to say this. The Abolition of Marital Powers Act, it strictly applies to common law. Yes, the common law position was that the husband is the head of the family. He makes decisions key decisions as to the lifestyle of the family. He is head over his wife. He represents the wife in legal representations. The wife generally is a minor. This was in terms of common law. That's why even if you were to take a look at history back in the day, women were not allowed to vote because they were regarded as minors. So the Abolition of Marital Powers Act, it came to do away with that common law position. But in terms of customary law, the husband is the head of the family.
And in terms of Christian law as well.
In terms of religious law, the husband is the head of the family. But of course...
But also in terms of common sense. There has to be someone who, in a setup, is considered head. For instance, I'll tell you, last night, the alarm went off twice. My wife didn't think of getting up. But I'm the one who stood up to go and check what's going on. That is the biological issue. I'm the one who's running around seeing what triggered the alarm, setting it off. Even my son didn't get up. So you want to tell me I'm not the head? I'm in charge. I have to take responsibility. Anyway,
my position is
the feminist position.
The feminist position. Truly, my position is when we speak of marriage as it wants to be pegged up and presented to specifically women, are we not saying that marriage is a partnership? Because as far as my understanding of partnerships is that we're equal. We can make decisions. I don't think necessarily we need to have someone lording over anyone to say, I am the head or I am above you in this particular institution.
Yeah. Let me leave you with the words of Maxwell on this, John Maxwell. He says, everything rises and falls on leadership. Everything rises and falls on leadership as in headship. So there has to be some measure of control. It may not be unspoken. It doesn't mean that if the husband is the head, they must abuse their position. The law gives them that position.
And that is not my position as well. What I'm saying is, in as much as you've described how there was an alarm setting off and your
Twice,
wife...
I didn't get much sleep.
Yeah, yes. And you are the one who was forced to go and check on that alarm. Your wife can come and give an instance where there were dishes in the sink and you did not think of washing those dishes, but she had to go and wash those dishes. And we could say that, there's that partnership, there's that meeting of the heads.
Yeah, so, you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's also a joke that, okay, you may be the head, but the neck controls what you do.
The wife is the
neck. So the wife is the neck. So I see we shouldn't get bogged down on this because the law has simply abolished this draconian system.
Gladly so.
Now, Mahadi Bogadi, is this still relevant in today's society? Should we be paying Lobola, or is Lobola become irrelevant to form not just a customary marriage, but also to form a civil marriage? Because even in the civil side, we have a two-stage process. How's Mahadi like Naneganza Mahadi? For me to actually be accepted and to go through the whole process.
I would say marriage is something that is entered into by two consenting adults. So however they choose to navigate their way to their nuptials should be upon them. And the relevancy of bogadi should be dependent on the couple that is seeking to get married. Yes.
Ramabot.
wa inya kana nna tsa gore ke tle go nna ke harogana le mme tota ke dumalane le ene gotlhelele ka gore tota kana le ka no bua gore tšhaba se nangwa ke mong ka ya latlhegileng le jaaka wana go nna go tabogile go ira dithubaru ba bo hikala ngwanyana go ntse go tebagetswa re rotloetse ngwao. You can be hypocrites e be re ba nna rona gape ba ene gore re bo a re boela ko morago ta utona o eteletse pele letsholo le o na a bina kwa bua gore ngwao ya botlhokwa bere mora re nya rata utona no ngwao ya no bua ka yone ya bogadi jo ke kitse gore le ene o bontshitse bere mora re nya ya no ga re batle sepe sa bogadi jo re latha sengwe le sengwe ya no nna ke tantsa bogadi jo le phoi kana jo dinonyane ha ke ntse nonyane me ya la ke nyetse mmeo kana ke le ditse moduli kana ke binna pele ga lapa la gago ke culture e ntse nya nyone ne gore tabe gore mo mo ta gore direla se le gore ena ba se batla ka gore go laolwa ke maikutlo a ga gongwe le gongwe mo society ngwe le ngwe go na le melawana a e kwadilwe kana ga e kwalwe e laolang seemo sa botshelo ga gone go e leng gore a itse ga motho a tlhokaetse go dirwa se ga motho a re ke gone mo go bopang gore that is our unique selling proposition. If we kill these things re bola bogadi se magadi la re bitsa re ke bogadi go ga ngwaketse ha re bola dilotse ra go ipitlela ya no gore re makgowa mme gape re palwa ke sekgowa ya no tsana tsone sa re palla ka ya no re float ya le mo dimo ga phewa ya na gore re na direction. So with this thing ya tlhokala gore e dirwe ya ka ntse.
So are you saying that when you do get married you'll be able to tell your parents, guys, I'm not interested in bogadi, tell my future husband not to bother?
Me. I want to just say I am not interested in marriage at all, but I think so many reasons. Should I say them on camera? But generally because I think that it's just an institution that would not benefit me at all. Personally, it would
independent
not.
woman.
So people should think in personal terms.
Yes.
Not in societal terms.
How is my marriage going to benefit anyone in a broader sense?
You don't see yourself as part of the community? Or
I do see myself as part of the community. However, me being a part of the community does not mean I have to have my arm twisted into an institution I firstly know I would just not handle, and it is just not designed for me.
Okay.
But what I wanted to say was that, if it ever happens that for some reason I reach a point where I give into that particular institution, if I feel like economically it would not benefit me and my partner, I just simply would not be okay with them going through that whole process.
Okay.
Yes.
So
truly, and live with my husband.
I suspect you'll get a lot of resistance from the folks.
Who's getting married?
Yeah.
I'll just go and elope with my husband and we'll live happily ever after.
All right. What is the legal position on bogadi, sir?
All right. Going back to what I said earlier on, Botswana operates on a legal system of law. These are two separate systems of law, and like Mr. Mabote has said earlier on, the civil aspect of law, or rather Roman Dutch law, is something that is imported, and from where it was imported from, bogadi is not a requirement for a valid marriage. So you can go to the DA's office. In terms of the Marriage Act, you simply need 2 witnesses and you can get married legally, and no one can challenge that. However, in terms of customary law, like Mr. Mabote said earlier on, in terms of customary law, bogadi is a requirement. If you haven't paid bogadi, no matter the manner of white wedding you have had, hawanyal. In terms of customary law, hawanyal. But in terms of civil law, you have married. So it depends with the regime, the legal regime that you want to run your marriage. Is it the customary law regime or the civil law regime, more fully, which emanates from Roman Dutch law and is now codified in our Marriage Act?
Okay, let me put a spanner in the works and ask, can the husband claim it back?
Lobola, bogadi.
If the wife turns out to be barren, or if there is a situation of a divorce, where the wife, for instance, has committed adultery or something has happened?
I think the best person to answer this question.
I think we can hear what Mr. Mabote can say from this.
No, like I'm curious.
ya no nya wa ga nna ya ka Setswana bogadi ha bo ke bo boa hela ha o tsere motho o lo a rwa motsa kana so se o lebele gore kana go na le go mo teng you do your due diligence hela ka se go se bu o tshwanetse gore ha o ya go nyala motho bo nyala motho o mo itseng ga o ka tswa nyala motho
Motho ba re nka nako go mo tseba.
mo se gore wa ro nyala ma kana gape ga o nyale motho o nyala lo lwapa lo ha tsena kwa go lona o tla o ke tsa khotla ya re modukane le yanong ka gore go na le mosadi o tseneng a ba o ke tsa ba maketse jalo go ne process yone ya go tsayo ga ka ja ro sna na gore ke motsere go re dumela gore ha o motsa wa bo itse go tsaye yanong ha go batle gore kgantanyana bo irang kgata ke tlhana me yanong bo aka gore mosadi o yanong o nonne ke a musa ka re go ka nna chaotic Setswana se letlele dilo tsa go nna yalo ga bo busi.
I can endorse that as a headman of the Mudukanele ward in Kanye. I can officially confirm the traditional positions being adopted by Ramabote. Don't say I'm biased, but I'm aware of the law. For me to apply it as a headman, whether I'm a lawyer or not, I know what the legal position is in terms of our customary law. Now, the failure to bear children in a marriage, would it, under customary law, allow you to marry a second wife? I'll tell you why I'm asking. In the case of my grandfather, and this is open secret, when the first wife could not bear children who are male, in other words, descendants, it was agreed among the elders that he can go ahead, Lerumo himself, he can go ahead and get the second wife. And they were happy, they lived happily ever after. And we're living, even as a grandchildren, we're living happily ever after. But my question to you is that would this still happen now? Something like that, where you are not bearing me sons. Under customary law, I want a second wife.
I think as Kuda has discussed earlier, customary law does allow for polygamous marriages. So I'd say yes. That
No,
would
but you would have married under civil.
no, under civil that is a crime.
Okay. So would you then have to divorce under civil, remarry under customary law,
Yes.
and then marry again the second wife? You do a 3-stage process: divorce first,
Yes.
and then marriage under customary law to that I'm not getting rid of you, and then the second wife.
Truly.
Would that happen
Yes, that would be the
when you
tedious.
interpret the law?
That is the tedious process you would have to go through, because under civil law, having more than one wife is actually a punishable offense.
Get locked up?
I believe so. I think you'd go
or
to
a
jail.
fine.
Yes, you would actually, and I don't think that other marriage would be recognized afterwards. Yes.
Ke kopa go botsa jaanong ke ra ke lo botsa nyana di atone gore o na le mosadi ga tshole bana jaanong wa motlhala ka gore ga tshole bana o batla go monyala gape molao o na le nako yeo go letlelang gore o tlhala motho ebile le wena gape ke wa tintibetsa ba re o monyala kako molao wa reng ka kganya ga ona go lebelela gore ga monno kana ke re na tlhala motho ebile be ke etlang wa monyala wa reng ka kganya teng.
I think
No, you can remarry as much as you want.
Nyakera o sna o tlhala the same
Even
person
if
o bo
under,
ka
I know of cases where people divorced and then went out with other people and found that they were wrong people. Then they came back, they divorced there, and they came back and they got married. The law recognizes that.
Okay.
There's no difficulty there. At least that's what I think. What do you think, Kuda?
Yes, the law is clear with regards to that, and that is permissible. But then, truth be told, in terms of lived realities, not all Botswana have the energy to go through a divorce, then marry again under customary law. It's not every Botswana who has that energy.
You have to be really persistent.
Yes, you need to be a citizen
Determined.
who lives within the law to know this and in order to apply it.
Yeah.
But what Botswana generally do, and what is common knowledge, when men see that we seem to be having a problem, we can't have a child, myself and this wife, men are quick to go out. Most men, they'll just go out and test the waters outside to see if it's them who are the problem or the other party is the problem. But with some people or couples that are advanced in terms of the lifestyle of living, they would approach medical practitioners, try to see what the problem is, and thereafter sit down as husband and wife, and maybe with the elder to say, can I make you but I also want kids. Can I
be given
Yes,
permission?
I want to. Can you? Of course, he can do so without asking permission. But for the sake of keeping relations, he can
No,
just
that
say
would be adultery if he does that.
it would be adultery. That's why I said for the sake of keeping relations,
Yeah.
and so that he's not accused. He'll then have to bring it to his wife and to the elders to say, we cannot have kids. She cannot have kids. Can I go out and marry another, or can I just have kids out there?
I
Yes.
think the elders might give consent.
Well, it depends. Because on the other hand, it would now then be divorce. So the elders would now have to weigh, not knowing what the feminists would say.
So I just want to understand something regarding this particular topic. You mentioned that in terms of a culture where the wife could not have kids, then the husband would be given permission to take another wife. What was the instance when the husband was the
I'm
one?
talking things that happened 70, 80 years ago, so
Okay.
I'm not sure now.
What happened in that particular instance? Okay, that's
They
something
live
that
happily ever after. I'm part of that. I'm part of that polygamous setup.
where the husband was.
My father is a product of the second marriage, and my cousin brother, whatever you want to call it, is a base, is a product of that first one.
The first one.
Yeah, we're actually brothers.
So the what I do understand what you're saying, that you are describing a lived reality and or whatnot, but what I do want to understand, what I'm trying to show is the lack of finality, or the hypocrisy. Let me just be blunt and just say the hypocrisy of it all. To say, okay, why wasn't the woman given the liberty to take on a second husband? To give her the children. Okay.
ha monna nna ke sa tshole ke tsere se se iragalang go gore ke bua ka dilo tse di iragetseng mo gompieno
Okay.
go a go tsewa monna kana mogolo wa adimiwa ko ntlong ya gago re lefoko kana re semama ra go koparra re lemogile gore monna o se motse ga a tshole ga go irelo mo pontsheng ke dilo tse di dirwang ke bagolo ko sephiring ko teng ebile gona po tla ba itse ba go itse mo wena le mosadi wa gago hela ebile bana go itse gore ga ba tshole go go tsewa motho a ke re ba tshwana le bana ba monna le mosadi go tsewa nna kana go tsewa ene motho mo gonne a ba go tsewa mo ntlong yame a ba ntsholela bana ba ra mabote mo teng ga ntlo yame a ba bo a nna go lapeng la gago hela ba ba meba ke a ba tlhokomela hela ke ede ga gonne ke itse gore bana ba ke ba ka
ke sephiri sa lona
le
mo
sephiri sa
lapeng.
lona mo lapeng
Oh, that's very interesting. So it was very much secretive as compared to in the wife's instance, where another woman would just be brought in and everybody just knows that that barren lady has a sister
No,
wife.
it's done very quietly, like you said. It's not
Even with the second wife
it's just,
type of.
it's just something that will be done behind the scenes, and the children are not told about that barrenness. I'm just raising it to make the discussion a bit more solid here. Now,
Okay.
and the barrenness related to the male, I mean, because she did have two female, and it was very important as the chief in the kota to have a male descendant take over when you, So anyway, let's proceed. In South Africa, I think they have three types of marriages. They have the marriage in community of property. They have the marriage out of community. They also have the accrual system, where you meet somebody and then from that day onwards, it's in community of property. That's in South Africa as far as I've studied. But what is the position in Botswana? What are the regimes that we have? Marital regimes. I'll ask Kuda first, and I'll invite you to comment.
All right. So in terms of the laws of Botswana governing marriage, when you approach, like I said earlier on, there is the common law or the civil law, and there is the customary law. So if you get married in terms of customary law, by default, that marriage is in community of property by virtue of it being a customary law marriage. But if you're to get married in terms of the Marriage Act, and it's a civil marriage, there are two forms which are put before you, and you have to pick one, or rather three forms. There is Form A, and another Form A, and then there is Form B. So let me start with Form B. Form B is the easier one. Form B, this is marriage in community of property, and this is strictly between Botswana. So a foreigner and a Botswana cannot sign the Form B. They cannot.
They cannot marry in community.
They can, under Form B, they cannot.
Yeah.
Form B is reserved for Botswana. And then there is Form A. So with Form A, there is a Botswana and a Botswana who can say, "Re Botswana, but we don't want to get married in community of property. We don't want to sign Form B." There is a Form A for them. And then there is the other Form A for a citizen and a non-citizen who get married out of community of property. So that is how the system is currently. So Form B was designed, or rather this whole system was designed after the government took recognition of the fact that foreigners were coming in, marrying Botswana, thereafter divorce them, and then get a piece of the land that they own. Isn't it? It is known that a Botswana is entitled to 3 pieces of land: residential plot, Moraka, and Masim. Yes. So it was then seen that when Botswana get divorced to foreigners, these are divided and the foreigner benefits. So that's why the government then said, no, if it's a marriage between a foreigner and a Botswana, let it not be in community.
So there was an amendment. was
Yes.
there?
No, it's not an amendment, but the forms.
Yeah, the
Yes.
forms were changed.
Yes, the
to
forms
accommodate
were
that
changed.
situation.
Yes.
Okay. Is that your understanding, madam?
Yes, it is. And also, I wanted to add that the whole initially marriages were automatically in community of property, and the abolition of the Marital Powers Act came in, and it further cemented what had been ongoing to change that and introduce out of community of property, because the initial standing was that antenuptial contracts will help to protect instances where parties did not want to fully be married in community of property. So then came the abolition of the Marital Powers Act to introduce the different regimes.
Okay.
Yes.
What about the accrual system that I mentioned, which is in South Africa? Does it have no place in Botswana?
Well, it does. If an antenuptial contract is more or less of a marriage contract, this is something that you sign before marriage, and by the time you go to the district commissioner's office or district administrator to get married legally, you have to present it. So with an antenuptial contract, what you're saying is, I have these properties and I do not want them to form part of
You
the...
specify that in the contract.
Yes, you specify to say, I've got these properties, I do not want them to form part of the marriage regime, or I've got these properties, I want this to form, and I do not want this to be part of the marriage regime. So an antenuptial contract can be one with accrual. One with accrual meaning what I had before marriage is mine, but what I acquire from the date of marriage going forward, we will share 50% each.
Hence the word accrual.
With
which means
accrual.
It accrues to the joint estate.
But there are also antenuptial contracts without accrual. So without accrual, it simply means that what I had before marriage is mine, and what I will acquire during the marriage will also be mine. What you acquire will also be yours. Both parties will have independent and total control of their assets.
So it seems to me, whereas in South Africa, the law makes provision for it, in Botswana, you leave it to the parties to decide at the time of contracting the marriage as to whether or not they have an A and C.
Yes.
Whereas in South Africa, you will have those three choices. I don't know whether they have a Form C.
Yes.
But when I last checked, there was that option.
Yes, this is why it is important to visit an attorney before getting married, so that you can get advice on the different marriage regimes and the different forms that are there and how they benefit you and how you can use them to your advantage
So
for
does
purposes of
traditional-
estate planning.
Traditional marriages, Mr. Mabote, ever recognize marriage out of community or property? Or all traditional marriages are in community?
ke tsa gore go ya ka se kuda ntse a se bua le se ke se itseng ga o nyala ka Setswana la gore o tsaya mosadi o wa gago thuto tse o tsa nyana tsotlhe lo kokotetsa mmogo o rile o batla go nyala ga o ka jwa gore o batla go nyala bo re nyana ke batla go nyala meang setle ka se nna ne sala go ira jalo nya o nyala yala ka o tsaya go boka mosadi bila go ngoto o etse le na mane go tla go o tsaya le ngwana wa tlalele ntse yalo
Prenups. What is the essential ingredient of a prenup, and why do you need prenups? I'll ask the feminist first.
What is required for you to?
Yeah, and what's the reason for having a prenup, some call it a prenup, some call it an antenuptial contract.
Yes.
Ante means before,
Yes.
which is the same as pre. It's a matter
Yes.
of how you
So
say it.
There's an act that governs how to have that antenuptial contract. You have to approach a lawyer to assist you with that whole process, because there are documents that ought to be filed at the deeds registry. Yes, in order for that contract to be recognized. And it is very important to note that that particular contract has to be done before the marriage. And there's
How much time
actually
before?
I was about to say there's actually a time period as to how long before, and I think is it 7 days before. It should not have been done 7 days or less before the marriage, if I recall correctly. I could
thought
be.
it was 3 months.
I
but I'm
stand
not
to be
sure.
corrected.
Yeah.
No, it's much shorter time than
Yeah,
that,
they've
but I do
shortened
stand to be corrected. But yes, so that is essentially what needs to happen. You know, it's very important to
So you
approach an attorney.
cannot do it without a lawyer.
You cannot. Yes.
Okay.
And then the purpose of antenuptial agreements, I think, from my understanding and from my readings, it's basically to protect certain assets. For example, assets that you've gained through inheritance, such assets that you could be sharing with your siblings. You know, so I think that was primarily one of the major reasons why antenuptial contracts were created to begin
But
with.
let me see if any of you agree with Donald Trump when he says marrying without a prenup or without an antenuptial contract is equivalent to building a house and not installing the doors and the windows, leaving it wide open.
I
Well-
think we shouldn't take anything that Donald Trump has to say seriously, is what I'll say.
I think
Why do you say that?
Mostly because the opinions that he shares go against anything that I believe in. I will just simply say that so that I don't go on to a totally different tangent.
Yeah.
Yes,
But is he right in this description?
he's not. Well,
That is like being left with your pants down or exposed.
okay, I think that prenuptial agreements are important, if I'm being honest. I would unfortunately for me, I would have to agree with him in this particular.
You just said we shouldn't take it seriously.
I don't like that I have to agree with him, but I would agree that, you know, it's just leaving yourself barren. So
Is
yeah,
it an advantage for the spouse who comes into the marriage without anything? When, for instance, if someone marries a billionaire and comes with just
I would
the
look
good
at it.
looks,
I would look at it like this. I think it just allows the couple to have their own clean slate and be able to be united on their own terms.
so it would be wrong for that billionaire to sign that contract without a prenup.
The marital to sign it to begin with. Don't get married, but anyway.
Yeah. Let's hear what others think. But I need what to remember before Kuda comes in.
onyan prenup ona tota ke tsa gore le ha ke le conservative ke ntsana di tse dingwe kana re lebeletse gore re ha kae gape le lebella gore o nyala o le mo ga ntse di kae kana o ngwalo nyala na le gore lo hetsa ko UB lo tlhelo simola go bereka mmogo lo bo lo nyala na ka lo gona le go sena prenup yo ke di bona gore a be le so se leng gore se siane mme ga gongwe gore a go tlhela motho wa le gore o kokwantse dithuto tse dintsi hela tse e le gore maybe se e bele wena o tla o santse wa o ikaga ke dumela gore ga gongwe go botlhokwa thata gore dilo tsa go nna jalo o le motho o di sireletse go ba tsala le wena le bana ba nona le bone ba ntse o di dira ona le bone gore ba tla ba nne le sabe ba tsala le wena ga o ka nna le mathata mo lonyalong lwa teng ka gore manyalo a malatsinyana ra itse gore kgela ka re ke kgwebo hela o nyala motho ka Mozambique e tlang go tlhadile jang ga go nna botoka gore o kgone gore o sireletsa.
Yes. Final word on this topic, Mr. Kuda.
Well, I agree with what the other panelists have said, but from a legal perspective, antenuptial contracts are there for the purposes of establishing justice and fairness to a greater extent, of course, and for purposes of estate planning. So ANCs or prenups or antenuptial contracts, they are there to simply ensure that the other party does not unduly benefit from what already was. So supposing I, as a billionaire or millionaire, get married today, there's no solid reason, there's no justifiable reason, and in all fairness, it is not fair for someone to come, get married to me, and divorce me after 5 years and get half of everything. It's not fair. Emotions aside, but in terms of fairness at a legal standard or at a legal standpoint, it is not fair. So from that standpoint, I think that is where my opinion is based upon, and without doubt, ANCs or prenuptial agreements are important. And both parties, be it husband and wife, I think it's something that both should sit down, talk to each other about, and pave a way forward.
Yeah, which leads to my next question. How important is it as part of the premarital process for couples to go and see a lawyer, either individually or collectively?
It's very important. It's extremely important. Allow me to put it that way. It's extremely important that you see a lawyer, because a lawyer will advise you on the different marriage regimes, and a lawyer will also tell you of the importance or the benefits. So supposing you visit a lawyer and a lawyer advises you to get married out of community, what it then means is that if one of you is sued, right? If one of the parties, be it if the husband is sued, the property that has been bought by the wife is protected because they are married out of community. That's what it means. But if you are married in community of property, what it means is if one of you, or if I were to be a menace in my marriage and I am sued, even what my wife owned will be attached in execution. But but you have to fall victim, unfortunately. So it's important that you visit a lawyer before getting married, so that a lawyer can advise you on the legal implications of Form A, Form B, marriage in community or out of community, the benefits thereof of an antenuptial contract.
Yeah, on that point, I would add that it's important for you to see 3 important people before you get married. One is obviously an attorney, a lawyer. That's very crucial. Another is to undergo premarital counseling, to see a counselor, a very good one, possibly a pastor, and go through the rigors of understanding what you are getting yourself into at a spiritual level and also as a societal level. And the third person that I think you need to see, in my humble opinion, is a financial planner. You need to sit down with a financial planner and go through everything.
Yep.
It's all part of due diligence, and my personal opinion is that it cannot be avoided. You cannot when it comes to this, when it comes to the issue of marriage.
Nya re mona go ntsa gompieno re Batswana mme re mona go ntsa gompieno go botlhokwa thata gore pele ga wa go tsaya kana o nyala tsamaye go di agente Motswana o ye go kopa thuso ka gore ha o tsaya wa bo irisa yo emotions ha go ngwe Batswana ba gompieno go motho ba kgatlo ya gore o bone ngwanyana a bina mo TikTok aba taboga go go ene le billionaire kana le millionaire aba na excited ya be gore o batla go motsa gone ho wa tsona process tse tsotletse ka gore o batla gore a monyale ka gore o bona gore ba mo batla motsa o dira ra a le gore out of reflex tsa gagwe ya la tsa gore o batla go dira ya no go botlhoka gore a tsena go ya gagwe go di agenteng be go mo ruta gore form ya ka monna wa bua form A form B form C ke nga gore
a gona C mo botsa
ke ra gona mo form A ra form B ya ona ka form B di ntse yalo a ke re ditsewa mo go gona di act tse dintse gore nyana lo itlhaloganya botoka kana wa bonela form tse tharo tseo mme ha o nna le divorce ke dimela gore ha tle le tha ke dimela gore o ta go le go ntsi ibile le moruti wa ba sona kwa tengwe le ba gane le di agente ya la go tere tsa se nna nne ke ona no tla bo itse gore ano gore lo tse di botlhokwa gore o tsamaya ka tsela ya ka re mo go bua le ke dumela le wena gore bona le baruti ba go cancel bona le ba baruti go cancela batho o bone le bone ba ne gore ba dira di financial advisor ba lebelele di balance sheet tsa lona gore motho o botlhaswa go le ka mo madi a o itse go dirisa madi sentle ka gore ga ngwa ba go tsaya because money follows the character of the owner ha gore ga o itse motho o mo tsang ga itse go dirisa madi sentle be ke tlang o tla bo lotleletswe ka ntlha ya gore o tswa go tsaya motho o e senyene ntswane le gore emotional lo a dumalana ya no malatsi ya go you need to do your due diligence o le motswana ha o nyala motswana o nyala o ntsha bogadi ya ka ntse go buiwa hela ka ipona o ntsha bogadi o go tele go te wa batla o itse gore o kopanetse dithoto le motho o ha o sa batla go kopana le dithoto go ra gore ke we go ga molaodi we go tsaya ka tse wene gore o tla nna le option ya gore o ska o tlhakana dithoto.
As we get to the close, we're about to wrap up. I can't help noticing, of all the panelists, I'm the only one who is married. So I'm wondering whether there's something on a legal standpoint that people can explain for their hesitancy to throw themselves into this, or it is just too early.
To get married?
To get married, knowing the legal consequences of the regime.
Well, like I've said, my position about marriage is a very controversial one because I simply do not have any interests. But before I dive deep into that, I want to add one more person that I genuinely believe people should try and pass by before getting married, and that is actually criminal backgrounds, to ensure that your partner isn't some serial killer or serial robber or something of that sort, or
in other words, get the fingerprints.
Yes, figure out if you are marrying the right person.
Give me your fingerprints. I'm taking them to the police.
Genuinely, because I have unfortunately seen instances where people have found themselves married to serial criminals and they did not have that information. So I feel like that is also something that is very important to just check through. And yes, my position
and
with
ITC
marriage
as well. I mean the credit bureau as well. ITC.
Figure everything out. Honestly,
it's all part of due diligence.
Do your due diligence. Make sure that this is the right person who won't get you into any trouble or won't put you in any unkind predicament. And just to wrap it up, my position on marriage, honestly, is, marriage is a union between two consenting adults. Just allow people to choose whether they're interested in marriage or not, because unfortunately I'm not, for people out there, I guess.
It's a powerful institution though, It's a foundation for society. I cannot imagine just going back 3, 4, 5, 6 generations. I'm a product of marriage. If somebody had successfully made the argument that we are making, I wouldn't exist. Not only that, society would not have evolved in an orderly,
we wouldn't be
systematic
sitting
way.
here.
Yeah, I suspect you're a product of a marriage as well. You may be influenced by your feminist views, which can evolve, and I think maybe in 10 years when we sit down, the views may have changed.
I doubt it.
Or if you meet some knight in shining armor who sweeps you off your feet, you're going to forget about all this. But anyway, Mabote, let's hear you.
Nyame nna ke tsa gore ke dumela gore mo nakong e rileng ke tsa gore le nna tla sala mara go se ba se rileng ke dumela gore lo nyalo lo botlhokwa ke le go lo bereka mo batsading ba me le bo go bonkgone le bo go nna ke modimo na nako ya gago e leng gore ba go e beela gore o tlo nyale ga se gore botlhe ba ke kopaneng le bone gore go ne ba sa siama go ne le gore nna le bone ga re compatible ga bana molato go ba bone ba compatible le bone mme ga le gore go na le mo compatible gore o tla ba le teng a le teng kana se ga ka bua ke tla tshwana gore ke tla ke bona gore ke sala go morago mme ke ya go dira due diligence re mo ka gore balatsinyana go mpie go na le cosmetic surgery se di irwang ke di bana gore ke tlo di tse ke dire o tla go itlhala a ipompile mabele a itsentse marago ke nna mathata le nna ka gore jaanong ha ra go tsena go tsantso re lena a di antse disclaimer ya gore in terms of finance, in terms of kanse re bua due diligence how itse gore you have enhanced your looks gore bo itse gore o le gore ke go khatlhegela mme o ntsuitse sentle gore ga wa nna jalo gore go mo tsantso re ka re go nnela tse go buisana ka gore ha ka itlhala o irile gore nka nna ra kgaogana ka bona ka gore nna ne ke tsa gore motho mo ntle ka ntle gore motho ene o ntsae ke bona popa e hela ga ya ka nantsane.
All right, no, I think this is a good time to wrap up. Does Mr. Kuda want to say something as we wrap up?
Well, in relation to the question that you had asked last, it's a matter of time, but definitely I believe that it's a beautiful
I think in your case it's understandable.
Yes, it's a matter of time. It's a matter of time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it's not understandable.
All right,
in my case.
dear viewer, dear listener out there, this is the first one of its kind. I promise you we'll be releasing these on a more frequent basis. I'm yet to hear from the marketing team how often we'll be dropping these, but maybe once a fortnight. But I believe it's a good initiative. The idea is to bring out discussions pertaining to the law, bring out discussions pertaining to the legal framework in Botswana, and speak frankly and openly about these matters and trigger thoughts and trigger discussions. One of the things we're hoping to do is that on the comment section, you'll be able to comment, and at some future time, the show will become more interactive. But for now, please let us have your comments down below. We'll see how we can get back to you. But thank you so much for taking the time out. Like I said, the program is powered by Lerumo Mogobe Legal Practitioners. These are lawyers operating from the CBD, which is in the center of the Botswana. We're right there. The CBD is in the center of town, put it that way. And Mogobe Plaza, second floor is where Lerumo Mogobe Legal Practitioners can be found. Their numbers, since they are sponsoring this show, are 397-4002. 397-4002. Or below will also give you the cell numbers of some of the attorneys in that law firm. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes.
Go
ahead, sir. Just remind
foundation ya family me ya no mona ko nyetla ra go bua ka lolapa ya no ha lo kgaogana gore go iragalang ditlamorago tsa divorce ra go bua ka divorce hala we're going to unpack divorce le bone ba agente ba rena le bone ba ile gore ke bo mantutsi di ba molao ba le gore ba ka lo thusa mo kganyeng tsa go nna jalo jano itse gore nako e tlang re tla ka sone.
We're going to cover the grounds for divorce, what the law recognizes. We're going to deal with some of the legal cases that we've encountered, and we're going to talk about things to watch out for in a marriage that would legally lead to divorce. So I think we'll be helping a lot of people, and I would urge you, dear viewer, dear listener, to make sure that you find the time to follow us, to watch us, and to be part of this great journey. Thank you very much. From the legal series, which is, as I said, empowered by Lerumo Mogobe Legal Practitioners, it's bye-bye. Thank you so much for watching. Do not neglect to subscribe. Do not neglect to press that notification bell, not to mention the like button. All those buttons, please. That's all we ask of you. Make sure that you press them. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Bye-bye from the others.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.